back, Watercolor Blooms fam. How are you guys? I hope you're doing well. Today I am going to be doing watercolor leaves because I recently went to West Virginia and picked up some cute little fall leaves. We do not have these here in Nevada where I live, and I grew up in California, in Southern California. We did not have them there either. So I was super excited to see all of these. I got a whole crop of them. And today we're going to be doing some leaves. Yay! All right, so get your hot beverage of choice or your water, get hydrated, and let's get to it. Have fun. So you see that I have my paints out and I've sprayed them just to get them activated and ready to go. And underneath here, so there's my little babies all waking up. And what I've done is I've taken the leaves and actually outlined them with just a pencil so that I kind of have a guide, just because I didn't grow up around a lot of leaves, so it kind of helps me know what I'm doing. And as you see, I pulled a bunch of different kinds of leaves when I was in West Virginia. I have no idea what any of these are called, but I just tried to get a little bit of a variety. So you can see that I have some, different shapes. I picked different colors just for inspiration. And yeah, just have them off to the side. And these are some of the ones that I traced for the book. I've got different sizes, different colors, different shapes. So yeah, so there we go. So the first thing that I'm going to do is put down a light wash of my yellow ochre, which is a nice little warm yellow color. And what that's going to do is give a nice background to this leaf. And then you'll see that after I have and I'm going to basically do this on all of the leaves. And I can fill it in with other colors. I can drop in pigment, and what that'll do is give it a little bit of a variation, a variegated kind of look, because if you look at leaves, they're not all just one color, right? So that's what I'm going to do. Here what I'm doing is bringing in a nice little brown to give it a jagged sort of edge, and I'm intentionally doing this while it's still wet so that it diffuses a little bit on that edge. So and here I'm bringing in a little bit of the brown color to just add some of those spots. I'm not being too precious about where I'm putting these. I'm just kind of adding them here and there, because as the leaves that I was looking at that I brought home have little speckles, and they're just kind of all over the place in terms of how they look. So that's what I'm doing right here, doing some dropping in of color and intentionally doing it wet into wet, which means that while the paint is still wet, I'm dropping in more color. I'm also being careful not to drop in too much water. So off camera a little bit, you're not seeing it necessarily, but just letting you know that I'm only picking up pigment, not so much water. And then I'm also adding these little vein lines again while it's still wet, so that it diffuses. And one thing that's really nice in watercolor is if you do layers. So I'm going to let that dry, the leaf that's on the left, and then I'm going to come back, and when it's dry, I'll add in more details. So here, I think this is either an oak or a maple. Again, I don't remember the names of these leaves, but just dropping in some really light yellow. And while it's still wet, I'm going to add in some of these vein lines and bring in some of the green. what I like about this layering technique is that it just gives it a little bit more dimension. You're kind of mixing the pigment on the page. So that's what I'm doing here. And I'm not even necessarily putting down all green. You can see that I brought in some stronger yellow and sort of mixing it up. And I'm just sort of painting it in, kind of coloring book style. That's what I like about having the outline is it literally, if you can color in a coloring book, you can do this style of painting. So it makes it really nice to be able to use it as a guide. So now that I've laid down the base color for this leaf, I'm going to come in and give it some detail. And you'll notice it's kind of wonky. Like you don't have to have these leaves completely perfect because they're perfectly imperfect, just like us. So the technique that I'm doing right now is called glazing, where I've laid down a base color of that brown. And then on top of that brown, I'm bringing in some of that yellow ochre, and it just gives it a little bit of a depth and a richness to it. So that's what I'm doing right now, is just kind of going over that, and that's because that brown has now dried a little bit. Next, I'm going to come in with some darker brown, and this is still with it wet. You can see that it's sort of immediately moving once I lay it down. And that's, you can see that brown color. And that's what's nice about the wet into wet, is that it just really gives like a diffused kind of look. And I'm just bringing in some darker, richer brown. If I wanted to wait a little bit, it wouldn't have spread quite as much. So I'm moving to a smaller brush because I didn't really love how wide that line was there. So I'm bringing in a little bit of a smaller brush for my detail work. So I'm going to be picking up some chocolate brown here, and really with my small liner brush, and I'm going to give it some nice fine detail. So the way to get some really nice detail is to pick up the pigment, and I roll my brush. I don't know if you noticed that, but I sort of kind of swirl it around and then I roll it. And what that does is, on a round brush, that makes a really nice point. So what I'm going to do now is define those edges and the stem in the middle. And you'll see that each time I sort of roll that brush, and that just gives it a really nice, almost like a ballpoint pen kind of feel. So that's just a little trick for you. And I'm going to add um, those cute little edges. And you'll notice that even as I go around, that I'm not necessarily outlining. So it's not completely around. I think it actually looks better when you don't necessarily outline it all the way around. You know, you leave a little bit of gaps. I think it just kind of gives it a really nice little look and feel. So now that I've done that page, I'm moving on to my other leaves. And what I'm going to do is, in a similar fashion to the first one, I'm going to lay down those base colors and just get that. So same kind of way that I did on the other one, and just lay down all of those base colors. So I'm mixing up a nice little kind of a reddish, like cranberry red, and I'm going to mix that with a couple different colors. So I have like this orangey red, pinky red, and just kind of mixing them. That's one thing, is that, don't be afraid to sort of play around with your colors that you have, whatever set you have, if it's a palette or, tubes or whatever you have, just play with the colors that you have and just kind of mix them around, because the more that you play with the colors, the more comfortable you're going to get with, oh, when I mix this, it's going to turn into this, etc. So I added a little bit of brown in there because I wanted to have a little bit more of a muted fall kind of tone. So that is what I'm doing there. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of warmth with my yellow here. And we're going to go ahead and just start dropping in that first layer.